Alright, hello, welcome back. It's time for another training game because it isn't all about puzzles, it's also about putting it together and into the arc of a game. So, I'm going to look for a game against someone hopefully around my level and hopefully a slightly longer game, although I am, of course, trying to work on my time management. The fact is, when it comes to the Canberra Chess Club Championship, the games are pretty long. So I would like to practice things as realistically as possible. Now, with that in mind, I'm looking for a game that's going to be relatively long. Whether or not we get one is another story. This one is a nice high-rated opponent, but not a super long game. I'll take this one anyway because it's what is best on offer at the moment. We have white against a 1780 in a 15-minute and 10 game. They're playing the Caro-Kann. They're going to play this move next, and I'm going to play this because it's some sort of theory that I know, the fantasy variation. What I don't love about it is it gets very sharp. If he takes, I'm going to take here. Whereas, as you know, what I've been trying to do is play in a very solid manner. But at least we're going to get into a game and I can try and play solid or, try and work it out from a certain perspective. If it is sharp, though, I'm going to try and adhere to this guy, Mikhail Tal. This is a drawing that was done by my very, very good mate, Dave Noble. And he's given a quote there by Tal where he says, "You must take your opponent into a deep, dark forest where 2 + 2 = 5 and the path leading out is only wide enough for one." Mikhail Tal. So let's use that as some inspiration. And let's now play on. So I'm pretty sure the more standard move would actually have been bishop b4. It wasn't played though, so I'm just going to now play on in a way that I think is nice and comfortable. I'm thinking about this as a definite potential move, but I might also just now disallow this whole idea by playing a3. That might be a little bit slow, however, in the sense that why not do something that develops me a little bit quicker? Something that can get me developed a bit quicker. Now, in general, I think you want them to take here and you take here, and then maybe you get a bishop here and a knight here and a rook ultimately here as well. But I can't force these things to happen. So what I'm going to do in the meantime, a3 could well make sense. But I need a couple other candidate moves. There's no checks available. A couple other candidate moves here would include bishop d2 or bishop e3. I think these moves are both reasonable. But I think this move is also reasonable. And so that's what I'm probably going to do. And my idea would be to follow up like this, putting the knight on e2 and just castling. Or do I kind of want to wait and see what he does? Another candidate move would, of course, be e5, just taking a bit of space. And then we might follow up with moves like, f4, knight f3. Although in that case, I'm probably likely to play this bishop d3 move anyway, and in the sort of sense of wanting to time manage, these are all probably relatively interchangeable moves. So this knight is definitely going here because he's currently blocked in his bishop. If I could land a knight here right now, it would be checkmate. That's probably worth knowing. I just don't think there's any way for me to actually take advantage of that knowledge. How am I going to get a knight here? I can't do it at the moment. Could I sack this bishop? If he takes, I take, and then I am threatening to get here with my knight. But he's just going to move his knight out the way. And when I give this check, he'll simply take with his bishop. So unfortunately, I'm not in time for that. I'm just simply not in time for that. However, that's not to say that we can't play on in a productive way. Now, if we push this pawn forward, he might land the knight over here. That's also worth noting. So this pawn's doing a really nice job at the moment. So with all that said, I think this move makes sense. It might make sense to move the bishop, but where do we want to move it? Maybe here to pin this knight. we could maybe move it there to pin the knight. He might then move the queen out the way, maybe somewhere like this where it hits 2 pawns at the same time. And I don't know that we would love for that to happen. Even if we do something like this to defend this pawn, that's probably reasonable. If he were to come here and attack this pawn, we could either leave it alone or just defend it with the rook. So that kind of position looks completely fine. I'm actually happy enough with that, because if we end up with our king on this diagonal, especially with this pawn already having been pushed, therefore weakening this diagonal, I don't mind having the idea of having a bishop here to somewhat give defense to the pawn. It's a very centralized move. Of course, he puts his knight here, but that's expected, that's fine, and I can play on in many natural ways here. Question is, how am I going to do it? Now, this is one option, but it does just drop the pawn straight off the board. So I don't necessarily want to do that, and I don't think there's a happy follow-up there for me. Now, this move is possibly still a good idea, because even though this square is weakened, he doesn't have a knight that can jump there, at least not straight away. He would have to go back, either via this or via this, and then here. So it would be slow for him to take advantage of this now. I could also take here, and he's likely to take back in, maybe this way or this way. It's actually hard for me to predict, but I don't really see what I gain from doing that. So maybe if he takes with this pawn in that sort of scenario, I could pin this knight, and that might be slightly uncomfortable for him. But nothing major. I could consider a move like f4 now anyway. Even if he takes here, well, then I simply can take back, and, things are sort of opening for me there. The other benefit of playing f4 is maybe I can put this knight here, and I think I quite like that. It's worth noting, though, what he can do in response to me. So if I play something like this, he can also play check. Then I can attack his queen, and who knows, maybe I am going to castle over this way one day, if this is all very, very open. If he gives this check right away, I can drop my bishop back. That's always another option as well. Not if I play this first, though, because if I play this first, then check, and I drop my bishop back, he can actually just take this pawn. So the order in which I'm doing this does kind of matter. But like I say, I still can play f4, and after the check, I can just play g3 and say, I'm hitting your queen, go away. And when he goes away, I can then put my queen to one of these squares and castle long. I actually like that. I'm going to give it a go. Could he take immediately? I would say he probably can, because again, if we take, he has check, and it forks my king and bishop. But my bishop there can drop back to a protected square where it attacks his queen. So actually he can't. If he tries to, I will immediately recapture. Of course, I'm low on time. And like I said, the game's not as long as what I'm going to have. I'm going to have time when it comes to the Canberra Chess Club Championship. And that is not to be underestimated. But at the same time, I need to manage that time well, because you can get into time trouble looking for perfection. So I don't want to do that. I don't want to be looking for perfection, but I want to be playing well. And I think this is nice. I'm not afraid of him taking this pawn. It's defended twice. I can take with my knight, and everything is still sturdy. It's a sturdy structure. Things are opening up. I've got 2 bishops placed in the center of the board relatively nicely. My king's maybe closer to castling than him. Still might go either way. I mean, I guess he's really only a couple moves from castling as well. So I can't say closer than castling, but I just think things are fine. These pawns are not isolated, even though they then become isolated from each other. This one can be defended by the other pawn. This one can be defended by this pawn. Not saying those are moves I would make, but I'm saying that these pawns are not necessarily going to be very, very weak, even if he takes here. I suppose if he takes this pawn and I take back, then this square and this square are no longer as well controlled by me as they currently are, because I won't have a pawn to do those jobs. And maybe he can then use these squares for himself. So after, say, take, and I take with the knight. Maybe he jumps this knight back and aims to sit a knight on one of these thereby weakened squares. Even in those positions, maybe this he doesn't, so it's basically let's wipe that. He's just pinning me here, and I don't think I really have to be so afraid of that. I'm not so afraid that he takes and I take back. This pawn structure, if he then takes, would not be very strong in the sense that I'd have basically a pawn structure that looks like this. An isolated pawn over here is not really what I want. So what I can do though, I think I can probably play this move. Queen d2, setting up a queen bishop battery, and not really unpinning the knight yet, but enabling me to castle and preventing him from taking and ruining my pawn structure. I would then have to take, if I don't want to ruin my pawn structure, I have to take with my queen. I could still put my knight over here so that if he takes, I take back with the knight. But part of the whole reason I played f4 was to be able to put my knight here. Doesn't mean I have to do that. I can be flexible and I can say, you know what, I'm going to come here after all. And I'm just going to use the fact that I've pushed the f-pawn and I'm going to castle short after all. And I'm going to get a rook here and we're going to try and attack you down these open lines. And if you're going to give away a bishop in an open position, hey, that may well still be good for me. So I can certainly still play this move. I don't think there's any reason why not. If he takes here, I can take with my bishop. And I think if he then castles, I castle. And if he then plays f5, attacking my bishop, my bishop drops back. So, if castles and castles, and he plays f5, attacking my bishop can drop back, or maybe here. I'm not too sure about all that, really. Not really too sure about that. Am I so afraid of this? And I could also deal with it like this, just dropping this bishop back. If he takes, I then take like this. And then he takes here though, so that's why you might want to do it with the queen. So if he takes, you take with the queen. You keep everything intact. And if he just castles on the next move, well then I can play a3 and push this guy around. And once he moves a few times, then I can jump up here and castle as I want. I think that's what I'm going to do. Yeah, let's do that. So if he takes here, well, I'm probably just going to take straight back with my bishop. And I think everything there is still fine. He can attack my bishop. Well, that's okay. I can deal with that. I can either take or I can just drop back in a variety of directions. So I don't think I need to be so afraid of that, which is what's on the board. In general, you want to preserve your bishops. That's in general. Now, if I take, I don't think he wants to take this way. So if I take, he's most likely going to take like this. And then, I guess, I would play a3. But then he plays this. Yeah, that's what he wants to do. He wants to jump his knight in here, attacking my queen and attacking this other knight. So even if I drop my bishop back, he might drop this in anyway. And then I have to take, well, then I would take it. So I'm going to drop back here. But if I do drop back here, then he can take this pawn, so it seems, because after I take, he takes this pawn. But in that case, I've won a knight for 2 pawns. And I shouldn't be afraid of that at all. I can just develop my, yeah, no, that's fine. So I'm going to just drop back here. I'm just going to drop back, guarding this square, taking it away from his knight. If he jumps into this square, that's probably a nice move, and maybe that would have been a reason to actually drop back here. But I don't think it's the end of the world by any stretch of the imagination. He's going to ruin this pawn structure after all, or so it seems. You know what? This knight was actually always destined for e2. Let's put it there. If he takes this, I'll take back. The game goes on. Maybe I've misplayed it, but we are where we are. We're going to keep on going. I don't think I've done anything drastically wrong. I think I've made a couple of inaccuracies. Maybe I would have been better off putting this bishop here after all, where it actually takes away all squares from this knight, or at least guards them. Whereas when I came here, I was really only taking this square away from the knight, but allowing it still to have both of those options. Okay, so here he's taken the knight. Now I can take back like this, and I think there everything is still okay, except if he takes this pawn, I take, he takes, I take, everything's fine. If I take here and he takes here, I take like that. I think everything there is also fine, is it not? I could take like that, but no, I want to preserve my pawn structure, so I'll take. He takes there. No, I don't think that works. I don't think that works. I think I just take. I'm pretty sure I just take that. So I'm not sure what he did there, or why, if I've missed something, or if he's just blundered. But like I said, I think I'd played a bit inaccurately, but I didn't think I'd blundered anything. And I think everything was still solid, which is kind of my goal at this point in time. So I think he might have just gone wrong, and I think he hasn't whipped out his genius move here that he had prepared. I think he's just realized he's gone wrong. And that if he takes my bishop, I take back. If he takes here, I'm just going to take this now off the board. I'm already up material. At least that's my first thought. There's no other checks available. There are no checks available. So if I do this move, I'm offering a queen trade. So let's say he just takes my bishop. Well, then I take the queen and game over. If I do this and he takes my queen, he's doing it with check. Fine. I take back in one way, shape, or form, probably with my king. Although not necessarily, but for argument's sake. And then let's say he takes my bishop. And then I'm just up material and I've got an active king. We're heading towards an endgame where I'm better. I have to assume I'm better. So let's go down that line. It's a forcing line. This bishop's also defended, so that's fine. There's no check available here. Now, the only decision is, do I take like this or this? Probably an irrelevant decision. If I take my bishop, I preserve the right to castle long or short, if that's something I want to do. But if I take with my king, then my bishop remains nice and active, which I think is nice, because otherwise he might get in moves like this. For what they're worth, they're probably not worth all that much. Probably much of a muchness, so I'm just going to make a move. I like that the bishop's here. It defends this pawn as well. Now we just need to basically continue playing. Now, this looks like a nice move for our knight, because then we might get a check and the option to basically get some further trades. Now, we're approaching an endgame. We don't want to rush this, even though we've only got 4.5 minutes. We just need to make a few good moves. That's what we really need to do, is make a few good moves. We've got rooks. That's lovely. It's lovely to have rooks. His rook's on a bit of an open file. Now that pawn is currently defended by 2 pieces, but really we want this rook to get active, and we don't want this bishop to be tied down. So I'm actually even tempted about a move like h3, just to say, your rook's doing nothing, mate. Your rook's doing nothing. Even if you get a bishop and sacrifice, you're not going anywhere, and that's what I'm going to play. I don't think we need to rush. Even a move like this, he would have been able to move his king forward. That actually probably is a really nice idea as well. That probably also is a really nice idea, but I don't think that idea, well, maybe it is going some. If he plays a move like this to block me from getting my knight here, well, then I can, no, he's gone the other way. So I'm going to play this again quickly. There's nothing wrong with this move. It's even better now that I have the option of coming here as well. He's falling apart, I think. So this move does kind of skewer my bishop to my knight, but I'm not too afraid of that for many reasons. One reason is I can actually use my very active king to defend both of them, and that's nice. Another reason is I might have this check. This check could be really nice. If he comes here attacking, well, then I can go check and win the full rook. And for that, and that also applies if he comes here. As would this check, by the way, just incidentally. So after check, let's say he comes here. Well, in that scenario, I can just move my bishop back if I want, and everything's hunky-dory. If I play something like this, then I'm just giving a bishop up, and that would be a great travesty. But I could also play even a move like g3, which attacks his rook, defends my bishop, and basically just smokes him out of there, as Naroditsky would say. This guy's going to have to just move back. Maybe it makes my pawns a little bit less secure, but after he moves back, I can even follow up with many other moves. But just having one more look at this, if this and this, I can take here, and if he takes this, then I don't quite have check with a fork, because he just takes. If I come here, he just loses this straight away. So how about this? He moves back, and then I play check and just take his bishop off the board. I mean, that would be definitely good. Definitely good. So we can definitely do that. We can also just play g3, and when he moves back somewhere, we can just play this move as well and just sit our knight here. Sit our knight here. Well, not necessarily if he comes to this square, from which he'd be defending that. What else can we do? We could defend the bishop like this with a rook. We wanted to free this rook up. That's kind of why we played h3. So we could play rook f1, just defend the bishop. If he does something like this, we take with the knight. And if he does this, then we have check, and when he moves, we take. So I actually think that is justified as well. And that's what I'm going to do. I like that move somehow. Is it too fancy? Is it too fancy to play this move? It might be a bit too fancy. But I don't think so. I've calculated it. I've calculated this move. It seems to work. There were many options, so hopefully I haven't gone wrong trying to be too fancy here. But in future, I can see myself, even after this check, or we might have a chance to play a check, move the bishop back, and then the knight and the rook will be combining forces against this pawn here. So this move doesn't work. This is one of the ones we calculated. We just go check, and on the next move we take here. At the very least, that's what we do at the very least. Again, if he steps onto any of these dark squares, we can give this check and win the full exchange instead of just winning the pawn. But alternatively, even if he comes to either of these squares, we can just take this pawn, and if he ever does this, we just come back. Our bishop there is untouchable. So from there, many options. I think that one was the nicest, just to take here. But we do have to be careful, because after this move, if we just move the bishop, we would have to move the bishop back here. Okay, it's a little bit of a got to be careful sort of situation. A little bit of a be careful situation. If we come here though, he has this check, which is a bit of a bugger to allow. So how am I going to do it? I'm going to do this after all. I'm going to stick to my initial plan. Yep, he's going to try and move me away, and fair enough. But what if I just take here? If I take, he takes, and I take, yeah, he can go check. And when I move, he can win this back. And after I take, he takes. Yeah, can't say I love that. I might just have to give this thing back, but not necessarily. I can also take this. And then after he, yeah, that's what I mean. I'll take this. And then after he takes that, we'll come up with the next move. So I probably did go wrong there, but I think we're still winning regardless. I think I, just tried to be too fancy, basically. Ooh, I can take this. That's what I'll do. I'll take that. If he takes back, then I have a nice little skewer. Check, he has to move, and then I win the rook, as far as I can tell. Now, at present, he does have this check. But after that check, I just move out the way. I'm still up by 3 points. Can he then take here? Well, no, because I still have check. And when he moves, I win that. So at the moment, things are looking, I think, pretty good. My pawn structure is still better than his as well. My king is equally active. I have less time, but whatever. In a position like this. Now, I think he should play this move, because otherwise what's his rook doing? So after he gives me the check, I want to stay active. Probably this is the move to play. Rook e3. Activating my king a little bit more. Allowing the possibility of forcing rook trades, which may be good for me. And, I might end up just sacrificing this knight for one extra pawn. So he actually goes there. That's surprising, but not necessarily a bad idea for him at all. So if I take, he has to take back. That seems about right. Let's isolate this pawn. If we can. Maybe we should have taken this rook first. Do I even want to take the rook? That's the question. I actually don't think I want to take that rook. It helps fix his pawn structure a little bit, so I'm not going to take it. I don't want to help him fix his pawn structure. You can have a shitty pawn structure. That should count for a lot. I know I have one extra pawn, but the fact that your pawn structure is crap should count for a lot in this position. Now, I want to get my king active. I want to get both of my rooks active. So let's do those things. If you take the open file, I'll just contest it. And let's see the impact that my structural soundness has against your structural unsoundness, as well as my slight material advantage. Let's see whether that's enough for me to win the game, or at least to draw, you would hope. Now, you'd think he's probably going to double his rooks up. That would make a lot of sense, but he hasn't. So I'm going to just defend that pawn, I would think. Yeah, just defend that pawn for now and seek to double up myself. That's a potential plan. And I can double up in a variety of different ways from here. Of course, I could have played a move like this as well to defend the pawn. But we're just going to take things pretty slow and easy. This might be an option, as it was earlier. G3 could be an option. He would then follow up with this check. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to keep everything really nice and tight for the moment. Keep my rooks defending themselves, so that if he gives me a check, I can just step out of the way. Not worrying really about anything in my position, and just saying, you can't touch this, basically. That's my basic plan here. Ultimately, I have an extra pawn, so that's really nice. So I'd like to use that pawn and turn it into a queen. That would be the ultimate plan. Again, this G3 idea is somewhat nice, but his rooks are very active. Now I'm forced here. No need to think about that. Is this actually a forced draw? Oh, no. He takes, well, I just have to decide which way I want to take back here. If I take with my rook, it allows him onto my back rank, which is slightly annoying. But I don't think he can do anything from there. He can't attack this pawn. He can't attack this pawn or this pawn. I'll get my king over here to defend the other pawns, and they'll also defend each other pretty happily. So I'd rather keep an active king. All right, now let's play this move. And we're just playing on. This is a weak pawn, so you need to defend it at all times. It can't be defended by other pawns the way my pawns can be. So you can play a move like that, and that's not a problem. But if I go check, you take, I take, then you've given me 2 outside passed pawns. Is that something you want to do? Apparently it is. Apparently it's something he's happy doing, giving me 2 outside passed pawns. I probably wouldn't have done that if I were him. Am I afraid of this pawn? Probably not. What if I play this now? Where are you going with that? You're probably going to come here with a check. I don't think I need to allow that. How do I want to do this? It is a good question. I'm going to play this. I'm going to play this. Maybe I'll bring my king across. And slowly, we're going to try and make some progress. Maybe we'll cut his king off and just slowly see if we can push these passed pawns down the board. Need to be careful, of course. Already, again, he can't really move this pawn or move his king away from this pawn. So if I just start pushing this pawn, you do this, I just give you a check. So there, all right, I'll move out the way. Which way do I want to go? Well, I'll just come here, keeping everything nice and together. Keeping everything together. Now I'm threatening to take this pawn, and if you take, I take your rook. In fact, I can still take it. No, I can't. Oh, I almost thought I was pinning his rook there, which of course I'm not. But I can give a check to start with, if that's something that I feel I want to do. I'm just going to push this pawn, because I've got connected passed pawns. I think you've got to push them. That's one of your strongest assets in this position. Why not use it? Use your strong asset here. This pawn is still weak. Still a very weak pawn. You can't deny that. If we do something like this and get a trade, again, this king's going to have to take care of these pawns. In the meantime, I'm going to take care of all these pawns and then get a queen. So I think if I offer a rook trade, it's going to be hard to say no. And if you do try and say no, I'm going to win a pawn over here anyway. So I think this might be a nice next move. I do have to be careful of this passed pawn. That's got to be wrong because of check. Now he's forced to deal with the check, which means take mine, I'll take yours. And the only thing for me to do now is just win the game easily. Do I just get a queen? Or do I take first? Taking first is a guaranteed win, so I'm not going to muck with anything else. Let's go get a queen. Game over. Game over. And the 1780 falls. Even though we played some inaccurate moves, he resigns. Hey, no mistakes, no blunders, no missed wins. Not a bad little game. I do think we played some inaccuracies, however, like I mentioned earlier, but I didn't think that I played any blunders. Actually, it says there was 3 mistakes, but let's have a look with the analysis board and look at some of the key moments, basically. I don't know if I really took the opponent into a deep, dark forest where 2 + 2 = 5 and the path leading out is only wide enough for 1. But I do think, just looking at this bar, that I started off as white with a minuscule advantage, as you do, and basically never got worse than giving him the most minuscule of advantages. Basically, it's still a draw there. But at a certain point in time, I think this must have been the blunder point. Yeah, this blunder where I capitalized on it and I just held a big advantage for almost the whole game, although it does look like I've made a couple mistakes here and it went back to almost a draw. So I never went back to losing. I never really was losing, but at this point, endgames, they're so difficult. You would think this is a relatively harmless move, but no, that actually took it back to basically being a draw. But thankfully, before too long, it went back in my favor. So just having a look at the stats, I was pretty accurate. In terms of inaccuracies, there was one. It does say 1 blunder as well. How is this a blunder? Well, I'm not going to listen to that because it's gone, the evaluation's gone from +6 to +3, still 100% winning. So even if it was a blunder because it's not as good as +6, it's still a guaranteed win, essentially. So I'm not worried about that. So I'll tell you what, let's have a look at some of the key moments here. The first one was this. This was an inaccuracy. Until then, I'd really played perfectly. We'll just go from the start so we can see where we were. From the start of this game, we played book moves in the Caro-Kann fantasy variation. And after e6, knight c3, and knight d7, I was on my own. I no longer know any of the theory here. I played bishop d3. It seems like a very reasonable move, and in fact it is dobro, which means good. And then he played this knight e7, which I thought sort of a little bit inaccurate because, to me, it was blocking this bishop, it was blocking the queen. If only I could have landed a checkmate here somehow. But by no means is it that bad. My advantage here is minimal. But I followed up in a nice way with bishop e3. It's actually Naibolio, which is best. And he moved his knight to a better square. And I came up with this idea of f4, which was actually a fairly difficult move to come up with because I've already moved this pawn once. There's no real need to move it again, but it's what I did. And the computer says, hey, by all means, play it, but I would have done something better. So what would the computer have done there? I would like to know. The computer would have just gone bishop b4. No, next move, thanks. No. I don't know how to make this chess analysis board work. But anyway, f4 was fine. He then pinned my knight, which became a bit annoying because I thought he might be able to ruin my pawn structure. And responding with the way I did, it doesn't hurt me much, but it also doesn't help. So I wonder if really the best way to go was just to ignore him and play knight f3, basically as planned. So what would be the case if I played that and just say, I don't care if you take here? I mean, that would be fine. My advantage is still, mine. It's not too bad. I really wish that this would just stick on the analysis board and take me from key moment to key moment, but give me a moment and we'll make that happen again. All right. This is the way to do it, I think. So this was the last book move. Take us to the next key moment. So this was all nice. f4 was fine. Bit of an inaccuracy there with the queen, but no big deal. He made his blunder. It was a bit fancy, really. But actually, the computer seemed to really like that fancy little doodah. Oh, not really. So here, I think the most obvious moves were probably g3. g3 was probably very obvious. It's taking me back to the analysis board. It's just frustrating. But after g3, I'm sure I'm a lot better. He has to play something back. The best move they're giving is rook h8. And then I could play one of these checks or just sit my knight here. I actually kind of think sitting my knight here would be stronger. That's my instinct. It doesn't actually give any of those moves as best. But let's say, it says knight d6. Knight d6 is there, but knight c5, I don't think can be bad. I don't think it can be bad. It's one of those positions, where you've got lots of good options. And that's what I want. I want a wide path to walk on and know that I'm going to be fine. Another option I had here was to give the check immediately. That also would have been probably much more simple. But I went with the fancy option of rook f1, which is good, just not best. There was another option as well, and the computer has rightly pointed out, g4, intercepting the attack. That would have been a nice way to go, g4. Just saying, look, I'll just defend this pawn with my rook. Your rook's just literally doing nothing. So, I've meanwhile gained a bit more space for the end game. Still threatening all these kinds of things. Thanks for coming. So that was a nice idea. But anyway, Rook f1 was fine, and after this, which is the best move, I responded with the best move, and then the best move, and then the best move. A very forced sequence. So here I could have actually gone check, but I was worried that here he would just take my knight. No? I guess I can take a pawn here. Yeah, taking a pawn here is perfectly fine. But computer says, yeah, white's winning by a long way here, but I think from a human perspective, this was a nicer move, easier to deal with. Idea being, you take my knight, I'm going to skewer you, and that's going to be an easy win. So therefore, I've won another pawn. And what are you going to do? He came here, that was perfectly nice. I didn't want to do this and allow him to regather his pawn structure. And I think that was a good decision. So instead, I just sacked my knight immediately for at least one more pawn. And then here it actually did just like the idea of taking. And when he comes here, he says, well, play b3 or a3 or king e2. I would have played rook f1. This is what I had thought. And the reason I didn't like it is because g5, which is one of the moves it gives. And I just thought, why would I allow him to do that when instead I can just come here and let him continue to have these long-term weaknesses. I'm not afraid of any kind of check attacking this pawn because this rook comes up here like this, defending the pawn. So that would have been fine. But this moment is kind of interesting where king e3 was a mistake. King e3 was a mistake. So the best move here was just to start doubling my rook straight away. I would have assumed he would give me a check there. I guess if he checks me, I can come here. And my king's now very safe. Everything else about the position remains the same. Alternatively, it says now king e3 is fine or king c3 is fine. So why was it so bad to play this king e3 straight away? Well, it says because of rook f to a4. What, attacking this pawn twice? Well, I wouldn't think that's such a big deal, to be honest. I mean, for one thing, I can play a3. Why is that so bad? Is it because you're going to play b4? I guess, b4, but I just do nothing about that. I don't have to do anything about that if I don't want. I might even just play, yeah. Well, I guess the idea is he's going to win the pawn back. So let's just say I do something like this, for example. All right. Then he takes. I take, he takes, I take, he takes. And yeah, it has become a lot more equal. It's a check there. So let's say I do this. Yeah, computer's giving zeros all around. So yeah, these endgames, they're so remarkable because for very non-obvious reasons, good-looking moves can be really bad and bad-looking moves can be really good. And the only reason for it is something you can see 8 moves down the line somehow calculating in a forced variation. But when you have 15 seconds left, even if you have 15 minutes or an hour and 5 minutes, you just sometimes can't get these things right unless you're like grandmaster genius level. So anyway, mistake. He played a good response. I responded well to that. So even with the mistake of king e3, things were then okay. Things were then okay. We had this trade. b3, it says, was also a mistake, and it preferred rook e3, which to me seems a bit weird. Why let him go after this pawn? I suppose you're going to go g4, grab a bit more space. But I just liked the ease of b3. What's he going to do? Well, he made a blunder, and I responded well. He made another inaccuracy, and like I said, at this point, I've got these 2 passed pawns. Position's really starting to work in my favor now. And I just pushed those pawns. He gives a check. I came here. That made sense to me. Here, it almost made sense for me to take this, but he can take back and I lose. So I played a4, which again, we've been through. It says it's a blunder. I say, blunder off, mate. Still a winning position. And then here he made his final mistake because he allows this forced rook trade. And at this point, this is completely unstoppable. And look at the evaluation. It's shot up to the stratosphere and there's nothing he can do. Of course, here I could do whatever I want. I can push. There's nothing bad about that. But just to make things simple, I decided to take straight away and then just run up and get a queen. He resigned, but this is what would have happened otherwise. A double queen checkmate. Thanks for watching. I think that was a decent game. We're back into the 1700s. We beat a relatively strong opponent. A relatively nice game. And hope you've enjoyed it. I certainly have. And we'll see you again soon. Cheers.